For my darlings, Deepak and Divya, page number 10, lesson number 2, Latitudes and Longitudes, locating places on the globe. Thousands of years ago, when there were no space shuttles or rockets sending down images of the Earth from space, people had no way of knowing what our planet looked like. To get a better idea about the Earth, to be able to visualize it, and to know where exactly the continents and oceans lay on its spherical surface, the ancient people created the globe. The first globes were built by the ancient Greeks in 150 BCE. The ancient people created the globe. The first globes were built by the ancient Greeks around 150 BCE. What is a globe? A globe is a three-dimensional model of the Earth in miniature. What is a globe? A globe is a three-dimensional model of the Earth in miniature in a greatly reduced size. It is a true representation of the Earth. A globe is more accurate than a flat map as it follows the curvature of the Earth. It also gives us the correct shape and size of the continents and countries and shows distances and directions without distortion. What is a globe? A globe is a three-dimensional model of the Earth in miniature, number 1. It is in a greatly reduced size, number 2. It is a true representation of the Earth, number 3. A globe is more accurate than a flat map. Why? As it follows the curvature of the Earth. It also gives us the correct shape of the size of continents and countries and shows distances and directions without distortion. Globes are of different sizes and types. There are large, small, and inflatable pocket globes like balloons. Some globes can be placed on the table, and some can be suspended from the ceiling. While it is cumbersome to carry huge globes, it is easy to carry pocket globes or inflatable globes. Apart from being used to locate places, globes are often used to plan long-distance sea and air routes called great circle routes. They are also used to determine the routes of satellites. While it is cumbersome to carry huge globes, it is easy to carry pocket globes or inflatable globes. Apart from being used to locate places, globes are often used to plan long-distance sea and air routes called great circle routes. What are called great circle routes? Globes are often used to plan long-distance sea and air routes called great circle routes. They are also used to determine routes of satellites. Next point, points of reference on a globe. You already know that the Earth spins around on an imaginary line called axis. What is axis? The Earth spins around an imaginary line called axis. Two endpoints of the axis are North Pole and South Pole. The Earth spins around an imaginary line called axis. The two endpoints of the axis are North Pole and South Pole. The axis of the Earth is tilted at an angle of 23.5 degrees to the vertical. Again, Earth spins around an imaginary line called axis. The two endpoints of the axis are North Pole and South Pole. The axis of the Earth is tilted to an angle of 23.5 degrees on the vertical or to the vertical. The South Pole and the North Pole act as a reference points to locate places on the globe. Ask your teacher to show you a globe. You will notice that the globe is tilted at an angle just as the Earth is. See if you can locate North Pole and South Pole on the globe. Another imaginary line running around the globe at the middle is called Equator, spelling E-Q-U-A-T-O-R. Another imaginary line running around the globe at the middle is called Equator. The equator divides the Earth into two equal halves, the southern hemisphere and northern hemisphere. Try and locate the equator on your globe. if the teacher brings you the globe in the class. Relative and absolute location. What is relative location? The relative location of a point on the Earth's surface is its location in relation to another place or nearby landmarks. For example, Meena's house is to the northwest of Chennai Airport. Pune is to the south of Mumbai. What is the relative location? The relative location of a point of the Earth's surface is its location in relation to another place or nearby landmarks. For example, Meena's house is in the northwest of Chennai Airport and Pune is to the south of Mumbai. What is absolute location? The absolute location of a place is its location using a recognized coordinate system formed by latitudes and longitudes. Relative location is different. Absolute location is different. Absolute location of a place is its location using a recognized coordinate system formed by latitudes and longitudes. Latitudes and longitudes are imaginary lines that circle the Earth. The latitudes circle the Earth horizontally. Remember, the latitudes of the latitudes circle the Earth horizontally, while the longitudes circle the Earth vertically. First, learn what is horizontal and what is vertical. The latitudes circle the Earth horizontally, while the longitudes circle the Earth vertically. The two sets of lines cross each other at the right angles, forming a grid. How a grid is formed? The two sets of lines cross each other at right angles, forming a grid. Latitudes and longitudes are used to accurately plot the location of a place on the surface of the Earth. What are the uses of latitudes and longitudes? Latitudes and longitudes are used to accurately plot the location of the place on the surface of the Earth. What are the uses of latitudes and longitudes? Spelling, take care. Latitudes, longitudes. They are used to accurately plot the location of a place on the surface of the Earth. Lines of latitude. Lines of latitude are imaginary lines that run horizontally across the surface of the Earth. They measure the angular distance in degrees, minutes, and seconds of a point north or south of the equator. Lines of latitude are also referred as parallels. What is the other name for latitudes? Parallels. Lines of latitude are imaginary lines. What do? They run horizontally across the surface of the Earth. They measure the angular distance, how? In degrees, minutes, and seconds of a point north or south of the equator. Lines of latitude are also referred to as parallels. Spelling parallels, P-A-R-A-L-L-E-L-S. The equator is a zero latitude. It divides the Earth into northern and southern hemisphere. All the parallels to the north of equator in the northern hemisphere are called north latitudes. Similarly, all parallels to the south of the equator of the southern hemisphere are called south latitudes. Characteristics of parallels. Lines of latitude run parallel to the equator in the east-west direction. Remember, lines of latitude runs parallel to the equator in the east-west direction. However, they give the north-south coordinates of a place. They are equidistant from each other. The equator is the longest parallel. Which is the longest parallel? The equator. The parallels decrease in length from equator to the poles. The 90 degrees north and south latitude are just dots, D-O-T-S, dots, and represents the North Pole and the South Pole respectively. They are numbered upwards and downwards from the equator. They increase 0 degrees at the equator to 90 degrees at the poles. The N and S are used to indicate north and south latitude respectively. There are 180 degrees of latitude on the whole, 90 in the northern hemisphere and 90 in the southern hemisphere. What are the characteristics of parallels or the latitude? Lines of latitude run parallel to the equator. In which direction? In east-west direction. However, they give the north-south coordinates of a place. They are equidistant from each other. The equator is the longest parallel. Which is the longest parallel? The equator. The parallels decrease in length from the equator to the poles. The 90 degrees north and south latitude are just dots, DOTS, and represent the North Pole and the South Pole respectively. They are numbered upwards and downwards from the equator. They increase from 0 degrees at the equator to 90 degrees at the poles. The N and S are used to indicate north and south latitudes respectively. There are 180 degrees of latitude on the whole, 90 degrees in the northern hemisphere and 90 in the southern hemisphere. Important parallels. What are the important parallels? This is very important. The equator or the 0 degree latitude. The Tropic of Cancer is at the angular distance of 23.5 degrees north from the equator. The Tropic of Capricorn is at an angular distance of 23.5 degrees from the equator. The Arctic Circle is at an angular distance of 66.5 degrees north from the equator. The Antarctic Circle is at an angular distance of 66.5 degrees from the equator. These parallels help differentiate the temperature zones of the Earth. Temperature zones of the Earth we will read afterwards. First we will complete this. What are the important parallels? Draw this and do it and learn it properly. The important parallels are: 1. The equator at 0 degrees latitude. 2. The Tropic of Cancer is at angular distance of 23.5 degrees north from the equator. The Tropic of Capricorn is at an angular distance of 23.5 degrees south from the equator. The Arctic Circle is at an angular distance of 66.5 degrees north from the equator. The Antarctic Circle, Antarctic spelling careful, Antarctic, the Antarctic is an angular distance of 66.5 degrees south from the equator. These parallels help differentiate the temperature zones of the Earth. Now we go to the temperate zones of the Earth. We will do it separately.